So if we haven't met, my name's Hannah. I get to lead our hospitality team. So my title here is Hospitality and Scattering Director. So normally on a Sunday morning, this is not my role. Usually I'm found in the back in the lobby, and I make sure things run pretty smoothly back there. And then during the week, I get to plan what we call our scattering events. So we like to get in the community and serve people. So any of those events, I get to be a part in planning. But this morning, Adam's doing baseball stuff, and so I'm really excited. I'm going to share with you some of the things that I've been learning, God's been teaching me about rest and taking a time out and taking a Sabbath from our busy lives. So if you are familiar with the rhythms here at Narrate, you might know that the springtime is usually a pretty busy time around here. We have 3 scattering events that fall within just weeks of each other. And don't get me wrong, it's a team effort in the most part, but a lot of those finer details fall to me. Scattering director, scattering events makes sense. So it's my busiest time, I would say, throughout my rhythm here at Narrate. Also, this past year, I've been taking online graduate classes through Portland Seminary, so that didn't add any time to my schedule at all. Just kidding, that was a joke. It adds quite a few hours to my week. And then also this spring, my husband Scott and I, our calendar was just full. It was crazy busy. So by the time the end of May rolled around, it's safe to say I was ready for a break. So around here, Adam and the council do a really great job at incorporating rhythms of rest into our Narrate calendar. So about 3 Sundays a year, we shut down. We don't have gatherings, and that gives staff and volunteers, you guys, time to just be gone, be with your families. So Memorial Day weekend was one of those Sundays this year. So I was really excited. I was going to rest and be rejuvenated and come back really refreshed. And then that week, I was going to start working on my message for today, June 30th. So Memorial Day weekend happened. We attended 2 weddings. One was far, we had to travel, one was here. They were both lovely. In the middle of all of this, we welcomed a new baby niece into the world. They're not from Helena, but the baby was born in Helena. It's quite the story, I'll tell you later. So we had new baby at our house, new parents, family all meeting at our house. And so about Monday, 3 o'clock that weekend, I sat down and I was like, whew, I'm tired. I'm an introvert. 3.5 days of people wears me out. Don't get me wrong, it's so much fun. But I said to myself, I think I need a break, from the break. I went back to work on Tuesday, and I feel the need to apologize to my coworkers. I was a little grumpy, a little frustrated. I thought that because I had 4 days off in a row, my husband had the same 4 days off in a row, we were on vacation, I thought I was going to come back really refreshed and really energized, and my brain, you have vacation brain when you come back to work and it's like, I'm physically here, but I don't really know where my brain's at. That's how it was on Tuesday for me, and I was really frustrated. I was going to have all these miraculous insights into what I was going to speak about today, and I went home totally frustrated. So I went home and I called one of my best friends, and we're catching up. We haven't talked in a while. And about 10, 15 minutes into the conversation, she goes, Hannah, what's wrong? And I was like, have you not been listening to me? Everything's great. We're super busy. Work is great. School was crazy, but it finished kind of well. What do you mean, what's wrong? And she goes, well, you sound exhausted. And I got a little defensive. I said, I'm not exhausted. I'm not tired. I'm just frustrated. And I told her this dilemma I was having. And there's this long pause. And if you know Margaret, she doesn't pause. So I leaned in. And she goes, well, I think you found your topic for June 30th. And I'm like, do you want to fill me in on that? She goes, I think you need to learn how to rest. So I think you need to figure that out and maybe talk about that on June 30th. So I kind of thought, what am I going to talk about rest for 30 minutes? But as I started to process and kind of think about what rest is, I began to ask questions of myself. What is rest? What is it even? What does it look like? And how can we create and establish these rhythms of rest and work within our weekly schedules? So let's dive in. I hope maybe this might be helpful to you. So as a culture, we are busier than ever. A 24/7 world requires a 24/7 workforce. We can be connected 24/7 through social media and texting, and we carry around more information at our fingertips in our pockets than anyone at any other point in history. And I don't know about you, but I just use my phone to look at Instagram and save pictures of baby animals. I'm not utilizing this knowledge. But we're busy, we're connected. Busyness has become this status symbol. So I noticed that even in my conversation with my friend, I equated being super busy to being doing really, really well, right? And there's kind of this, I'm learning there's this disconnect. So I really liked this quote. And it says, "We've fractured our days, but toggling between work, family, housework, and other obligations, making us feel constantly behind. We're all a few steps out of pace, forever hurtling towards the next ping alert from our calendar." So what is this hurry? What is all of this busyness, this fast-paced, on-the-go lifestyle? What is this doing to us physically? And what are we doing to ourselves mentally? So my undergraduate degree is in psychology and sociology, so I was familiar with the stress hormone cortisol. Now, cortisol in small doses is really good because it prompts you to action in a crisis. So just like the Office scene we watched, there's this one part where Dwight's yelling at them like something like, "Use this surge of adrenaline to sharpen your decision-making skills." That's cortisol. But studies are showing that because we live such fast-paced, on-the-go lives, we're living with constantly elevated levels of cortisol in our systems. And this has detrimental effects to our mental and physical well-being. So mentally, these elevated levels of cortisol are slowly shrinking our gray matter in our brain. And we kind of need that because it stores and processes information. So this leads to increased levels of anxiety, depression, mood disorders, and all kinds of mental health disorders. Secondly, physically, it affects us. We see increased rates of sleep deprivation, headaches, increased rates of blood pressure, heart attacks like poor Stanley in the video. So psychologists are now studying what they've coined this term hurry sickness. They think you can actually become physically ill from living in a constant hurried state. So hurry sickness is defined as a behavior pattern characterized by continual rushing and anxiousness, an overwhelming and continued sense of urgency. A person feels chronically short of time and tends to perform every task faster and faster, getting flustered when encountering any sort of delay. Does that sound familiar? So I also found this quick little self-evaluation we're just going to take. You don't have to participate or raise your hand or anything. I just want us to be aware of our mental state as we go throughout the day. What behavior patterns can we begin to notice as we're moving throughout our day? So again, I'm not a psychologist, this isn't any sort of diagnosis, but I think it's important that we begin to self-identify these mental states that we find ourselves in. So number one is you may suffer from hurry sickness if you find yourself moving from one checkout line to another because it looks shorter or seems to be moving faster. Now, when I practiced this for my husband, Scott, who's an engineer, and he quickly pointed out, "Hannah, that's just being efficient. Why would you get in the line with 5 people when there's a line of 2 people right there?" So if you're like me, I'm not a competitive person, but when I get into Costco, when I get into Super One during a busy time, it's like game on. I become this horrible person inside, and I start judging people's carts. I am totally judging the contents of their cart. Do they have a lot of little items? Are they going to take forever? Maybe they have a full cart, but it's a few large items, so we're going to get right on out of here. Even worse, do they have a lot of bagged produce where the checkout person has to type in the little number? How dare they try and eat healthy? They are holding me up. Number 2. counting the cars in front of you and either getting in the lane that has the least amount of cars or is going the fastest. Totally true. Number 3, multitasking to the point of forgetting one of the tasks. Number 4, accidentally putting your clothes on inside out or backwards. I may or may not have done that before. And it's really embarrassing when you don't notice till like after lunch. Like, did no one else notice this? And number 5, sleeping in your daytime clothes to save time in the morning. That was a new one for me. I hadn't heard of that one. So clearly this hurry, this busy, this rushing isn't good for us mentally. It's literally shrinking parts of our brain. It's not good for us physically. It causes all sorts of adverse health effects. But I want to ask the question, what is the hurry doing to our inner world? What is this hurry doing to our souls? So in preparation, I was reading the book Soul Keeping by John Ortberg, and he talks about something called soul fatigue. And it's when our fatigue, there's different kinds of fatigue. You can be fatigued in your body. You can be physically tired. Mentally, your mental processes can just become exhausted. And also fatigue of the will. It's also known as decision-making fatigue. So studies show that the more decisions you make, the poorer your decision-making abilities become. A quick sideline, that's why Mark Zuckerberg wears the same outfit every day. He's always wearing that blue shirt and jeans because he doesn't have to think about making that decision, and he frees up mental processes to make other more important decisions. Just a fun fact, if you were wondering. So all of these fatigues combine to form what he calls soul fatigue. And this causes us to feel disconnected from ourselves, disoriented, disconnected from God and others around us, and even creation. So Dallas Willard has this really excellent quote, and he says, "Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life." So how do we do that? How do we eliminate hurry? And what is a Sabbath? What does it look like to take a time out or a break or a family day, whatever you want to call it? So in preparation, again, I did some reading, and I picked up this book, The Subversive Sabbath by A.J. Swoboda, and I was a little skeptical. It's been recommended to me a few different times, and I thought, what could this guy possibly have to say about a Sabbath in 300 pages? I can't even. Well, I read the whole book, and it's amazing. So I put a picture up there if you want to grab a copy, or you can borrow mine. It's really fantastic. So in the traditional Jewish culture, in the traditional Jewish time, this is when Jesus is walking around, the tradition was to practice the Sabbath from sundown at Friday to sundown at Saturday. And this was a time where people would come together and they would cease working. So at this time, the rabbis had recorded 39 categories of work. And so I put them all up there because some of them are really interesting. So you can go to the first one. Some of them are kind of obvious, slaughtering animals. I don't know, that's probably work. Performing strenuous activity, traveling, worrying, earning money, farming, kind of stuff. You can go to the next one. Cutting fingernails is apparently designated work. Who knew? Putting out a lamp, boiling eggs. This last one is totally my favorite. Getting a haircut up to 1 hour before the afternoon prayers before the Sabbath so that if the scissors broke, they would need to be fixed. Who added that one? It's awesome. So some of these are rooted in Old Testament law, but many of them aren't. But I put this list up there because, one, I thought it was really fascinating, and two, I think it speaks to the seriousness around which they took the Sabbath conversation. They were very intentional about creating a 24-hour period where they would cease working. So let's head on over to Exodus, and we can find some of these roots of a Sabbath. So if we're in Exodus, I'm in Exodus 20, and here we are with the ancient Israelites. Moses has led them out of Egypt, out of slavery, and they're wandering in the desert. Moses goes for a hike and is talking to God, and God is giving him these 10 commandments by which the ancient Israelites were to live by. So the fourth command is this: remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or your daughter, your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. So no one, not even the animals. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. But the origins of a rest or a Sabbath go back even further, back to the beginning of time. So if we go back in Genesis, we're in Genesis 1, starting in verse 31. Now, this is the creation story, so we're kind of jumping in the middle of it. So God's taken days 1 through 5 to create plants and animals and land and sky and light and day and all that sort of thing. On the sixth day, he creates humans. And so that's where we're popping into this story. We're at the end of the sixth day. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. There was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Thus the heavens and earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing, so on the seventh day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work creating that he had done. So this rhythm of work and rest begins with God himself. And even more interestingly, humans were created on the sixth day. So God's seventh day of rest is Adam and Eve's first full day on creation. So their first impression of God was a God who prioritized rest. He prioritized it. It wasn't an afterthought. It was their very first day. They rested. All the work was done for them. Now, where am I going? Oh, yeah. Thanks, Tim. So I thought that was really cool. And I know that there's a healthy conversation around how the world actually came about or how it was created. That's a great conversation to have with Adam when he gets back. Right? But I think it's important to note how this story was created. There's something to this rhythm of 6 days of work, 1 day of rest, regardless of how the earth came to be. I think it's important to note that this is how the story was chosen to be passed on to us. And I think there's something that God has instilled with us or woven within our being of this pattern of rest and work. So we can see this in history. In 1793, the French Revolution was in full swing, and they were attempting to eliminate any sort of Christianity within the culture. And so they changed from a 7-day week to a 10-day week. And the results were really disastrous. They did this for about just over a decade. So the suicide rates skyrocketed, their economy tanked, worker quality of life was poor, workers were very unhappy. And in the book, Subversive Sabbath, Swoboda suggests that it's because they messed with this rhythm. They messed with this natural 6 days of work, 1 day of rest, and he argues people weren't made to work 9 days and rest 1. We need to just pay attention to what God has woven within our being. And there's something about this 7-day pattern that just works. So I like to, when I'm trying to figure out and I'm studying this kind of new to me topic, I like to go to the Gospels and I like to see what Jesus has to say or if his life provides any hints about how we're supposed to kind of live this out. So there's plenty of examples, but I just picked out a few of my favorites. So we're going to start in Mark 4. Starting in verse 35. So that day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up and waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind and waves, and said, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified. They asked each other, "Who the heck is this? Even the wind and waves obey him." So Jesus took time for himself to rest. Even though it was crazy, even though it was chaotic, he took time out for himself to rest. And if you read before this, he had a pretty busy day, and so I'm assuming he was tired, and so he prioritized rest for himself. So another example that I found really helpful is just a few chapters over in Mark 6, starting in verse 30. So the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So just before this is right after Jesus has sent out the disciples 2 by 2 to the villages. So they've been working really hard. They've been preaching and teaching and healing folks. So they come back, and it sounds like there's still people coming and going around them. I love that Jesus honors their hard work. Like, he respects all of the work that they've done and intentionally says, "Hey, let's get away, let's take a nap, let's eat some good food, let's get rejuvenated here. You've been working super hard." So he not only prioritizes rest for himself, but for his followers too. And then just one last little example. I love this verse in Matthew 14:23. He says, after Jesus had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. So this is right after Jesus has fed 5,000 people. I'm assuming that's a lot of work. So he prioritizes rest. He goes for a hike and spends some time alone. So there's a lot of other examples. I just pulled out a few that really kind of spoke to me. Now, if you're where I was when I was learning about this stuff, I kind of thought, oh, that's cute. Like, that's a great idea. But I live in the 21st century. I live in the United States. I am too busy for this. But immediately after I thought that, I read a chapter in the book, and he talks about the great theme of rest throughout the scriptures. So it starts with God himself and inviting Adam and Eve into rest on their very first day. And then we see this command given to the ancient Israelites. And then we see Jesus modeling this pattern of work and rest throughout his life. And so for me, I thought, that's enough. That's enough for me to sit up and take notice and kind of think there must be something to this rhythm of work and rest. So like anything good for us, it takes a little bit of self-discipline, takes a little bit of preparation, and it takes some planning. So it's just like exercising. You don't accidentally hike Mount Helena one day. You don't accidentally end up at the gym, right? It took some time, and it took some planning and preparation and self-discipline. It's just like eating healthy, right? You don't accidentally buy the healthy produce and healthy foods to prepare a healthy family or a healthy meal for yourself or your family. You intentionally make that choice, or you intentionally choose to buy 3 tubs of ice cream. Whatever you do, it's intentionally your choice, right? And it takes a little bit of work, takes some planning, and takes some self-discipline. So a couple months ago, I participated in this healthy eating cleanse. Some of you might remember me complaining about it. So for 3 weeks, I couldn't eat anything like good. So it was no wheat, no dairy, no sugar, no alcohol, no caffeine, none of that. So it was a focus on kind of resetting your system and eating vegetables, fruit, and then healthy meats and proteins. So I thought, okay, this will be interesting. We'll see how it goes. And the nutritionist said, it might take your body 3 or 4 days to kind of work all the junk out of your system, and you might feel a little off. And I thought, okay, we'll see how it goes. So I woke up the Monday morning that this was starting, and I got a migraine. And so for me, it was like the first 7 to 10 days, it was horrible. My migraines usually last a couple days. So on top of the migraine, I felt crappy from not getting to eat pasta and cheese and all that good stuff. But I kept with it. And I stuck out the 3 weeks. There may have been some chocolate that disappeared from the fridge. I might have messed up a few times, but I made it through the 3 weeks, mostly following this cleanse. And now, today, I have habits and things that I've incorporated into my daily life that I can't even imagine how I did it before. Like, I don't actually remember how I chose to eat before this because I've experienced these awesome benefits. So I tell you this story because I think incorporating a Sabbath and I think incorporating a rest is something similar. It's going to take work, and it might take some planning and preparation. You might even get a headache. But I think that once we incorporate this into our habits, into our weekly rhythms, we're going to wonder how we ever lived without it. So a few points just to get us started. So I'm like you, this is very new to me, and so here are a couple things that I've found really helpful as I'm trying to figure out, what does it look like for me to work and rest, and how do I fit this in? So number one, journal your time. You probably have more time than you think. I think people are really good at being deceptive at how we're actually spending our time. So when I started, I thought, I don't know, everything I do is so important, and I am so busy. Everything I do is meaningful and has purpose. I can't eliminate anything. And it was like the first day I cleaned the kitchen 3 times and wandered around the house aimlessly for 2 hours. So clearly I have some time that I am not using well. Also, another thing I found really helpful was the apps that tell you how much you're sitting on your phone. That's really helpful too, because our phones kind of eat up time and we don't even realize it. Number 2 is start small. Start with an hour. If coming to Narrate on a Sunday morning is really rejuvenating and really refreshing for you, there you go. You've already got 1 hour. Start small and start to kind of carve out larger chunks of time as you go. Number 3, this was advice from one of my professors. He said, break up your days into morning, afternoon, and evening. So as you start to work up from an hour, maybe you can get to a whole evening. You'll have a whole evening where you're not working and you're resting and you're doing something really refreshing to you. And then from there, build up so you have kind of 3 of those chunks in a row. It doesn't have to be morning, afternoon, evening. It could be like an evening, morning, and afternoon. Just work up till you get 3 of those in a row. And then the last one, which is the hardest for me, is lose the tech. So I love a good Instagram scroll as much as the next person, but I think technology is really dangerous because it keeps us stimulated and it keeps us distracted. And a Sabbath isn't about being stimulated by a screen or distracted from the lives around us. It's about being present and being intentionally aware of our surroundings and who we're with and being with our loved ones. So the second question I had was, so what do I do? And I think that's such an American question, isn't it? We don't even know how to just be. We have to do. And so this question really helped me out. It says, what is life-giving to you? What is life-giving to you? Maybe that's being with others. If you're an extrovert, you love being with others. If you're an introvert, maybe you need a little bit of alone time. What is life-giving to you? In the book, he suggests thinking about it as an opposite day. What do you need rest from? If you're like me, maybe you spend a lot of time in an office, on your computer, so maybe you need to get outside and go for a long hike, go for a long bike ride. Or maybe you're outside or you're a construction worker, maybe you need to go inside and take a nap. I don't know. What's life-giving to you? These 4 words really help me as I'm kind of figuring out, so what can I do during these times of rest? And these words are cease, rest, embrace, and my favorite feast. So as we're figuring out just what we want to do during this time, remember those 4 words, and that'll get you started. This isn't just going to happen. We're not going to accidentally take a time out. We're not going to accidentally keep our Sabbath. This is an action of great purpose that takes some feisty intentionality to keep. But just for a minute, imagine what if. What if our lives didn't have to look like that scene from The Office? What if our lives got to be shaped by this pattern of rest and work? What if for one day, maybe one afternoon, we could stop toggling between the demands of school and work and the schedules, and we could just soak in the moment with our loved ones? What if we could ruthlessly eliminate hurry and just enjoy being? So throughout this week, and as you head out, I just encourage you to just have some conversations and just start to think, what would it look like for you if you ruthlessly eliminated hurry from just one day a week? So I'm going to pray, and the band's going to come up, and we're going to sing our way out of here. Thanks, God, for being a God that prioritizes rest. And thank you that you give us a good model in the text, how we can incorporate rest into our daily lives. As we go out from here, ask that you bless conversations and you help us intentionally eliminate the hurry and eliminate the chaos from just one part of our week. And we ask your help to do that. In your name we pray. Amen.
If you would like to engage further with Narrate Church, you can find contact information online, www.narratechurch.org. We would love to hear from you.